Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make this open wire woven bracelet. And this is what it looks like. So as you can see, it's woven, but because we're working with wire, we can achieve this open effect of the weave. And what I've added as well is, into some of the pieces, I've added some twisted lengths of wire to give it a little bit of an accent. So if you want to learn how to make that, then keep watching. And these are the things that you're going to need. You'll need a couple of pliers. You'll need to have a wire cutter to cut your wire, and then just a flat nose pliers, nice to keep handy. You'll also need that for your ribbon ends that will need to finish off the bracelet. And then you need your wire. In this case I have some 0.6 silver wire, which is a 22 gauge, and then I have some 0.4 mil wire, in copper in this case, and that's a 26 gauge. Now I'm just working with these colours because that's what I decided for this bracelet. You can obviously mix that up. The 0.6 mil wire is going to be the base wire, really, the wire I use the most for the bracelet, and the 0.4 is what I'm going to use for the twisted parts. So get all your things together and then let's get started. So the very first thing that you need to do is get all your pieces of wire ready. And for your 0.6 mil wire, which in my case is a silver, you need 18 lengths of that. And all your wires need to be 35 centimeters long, approximately. So you need to cut 18 lengths of your 0.6, and then if you're using twisted wire like me, you need 3 lengths of them, where it's just 2 of the 0.4 mil twisted together to form a twist. And you need 3 of them, and again the same length, about 35 centimeters. And like I said, you can obviously choose, you can do the whole thing in the same wire, without twist, with twist, different colours. It's completely up to you, that's the design choice. So these are the wires that you need for this one. So the next thing you want to do is set up all your wires so you can start weaving them together. And for this, I'm just going to be using some insulation tape. This is just what I like to use. You can try something different if you don't have this. And I've cut some strips. So what I'm going to do is grab one set of wires at a time. And for this particular bracelet that I made, each strand, you can call it, used in the weave is made up of 3 wires, where some of them have 3 regular wires and some have a twist in there. So the first one are just 3 plain wires, and like I said, I'm just showing you how I'm doing the specific one. You can choose to do a different pattern or use different kinds of wire, different colours. And then what I'm going to do is get one end together evenly and make sure they lie side by side, so next to each other. And I'm going to get a piece of tape, and I'm just going to wrap the tape around the end to keep them in place and make sure they lie flat. And what you'll notice is I leave a bit of the tip sticking out on the other side of the tape, and I'll show you why we do that when we're done with this. So just wrap your tape around, just nice and secure, and they sit nicely and flat. So that's the first one. You need to get the next set, which in this case is also 3 plain wires. Get them ready. Get your next strip of tape, and then take these together. Remember to leave the tips a bit on the other side of the tape and make sure that they lie flat next to each other. And then we've taped them together, and now we need to tape them onto the other ones. And what I like to do, well, what we need to do for this particular bracelet, we need to leave just a bit of space in between each set of wires. So that's why you twist them individually So you tape them together individually first and then tape them together with a bigger piece. That'll help stay in place then. Because it's mostly for the beginning. Right when you start out the weave, it's going to be the most difficult because everything's still loose and moving about. And now the next set of wires, for my particular design, for this one, I'm going to bring in one of the twisted wires. So I'll bring my next set, and what I like to do is my twisted wire, make sure that that is in the middle of the three. So when they lie flat next to each other, the twisted one is in the middle. And make sure to keep it that way throughout the whole thing. So again, tape these together individually first, make sure they lie flat. Remember to leave a bit of tail, a bit of tip at the other end. And then we need to tape all of them together, attach these to the others to become part of the bracelet, the beginning, all the way around. Make sure as you're doing this that the space you leave between each set of wire is roughly the same. It's not a huge deal because you can kind of, as you go, adjust the actual weave and make sure that that's even, and you can always just cut the beginning off. But just do it as nice and neatly as you can. Make them as close together as you can, or as even, with a bit of space. And then you just continue like this till you have all your sets taped together. And then I'll show you what to do next. So I've now finished up setting all my wires up. And then this is the pattern to achieve the pattern that I'm going to be doing with this bracelet. So the first two from the left are just plain wires without twist in it. The next two have a twist in it. The next two are without, and the last one is with. So basically you can imagine, to make it easier to think of, if you just continued adding more, it would be 2 without, 2 with, 2 without, 2 with, 2 without, 2 with. So that's an easy way to remember this pattern. So set your wires up like this if you want to achieve the same look, and then I'll show you how we start off. So before we start off the actual weave, we just need to secure the wires in place. And this is where it comes in that I told you at the beginning. You need to just leave the ends at the other side of the tape. And the reason for this is, if you just started weaving with your wires like this, chances are as you're weaving, these would just pull through. Even though you're using the tape, they can still easily just pull through and come out. And then you kind of have to start again. So we leave these little tails, tips of the wire, to the other side. Then what we do is just for a few millimeters, go in and bend them back on themselves. Like so. Turn it around so you can see. So all you do is put your flat nose pliers in and just bend them back on themselves. And you can squeeze them down a bit if you want to. And just do that with all your sets of wires, so none of them can come out. This is literally just to secure them in place while you're working with it. It's going to help make it a lot easier. And the last ones, like so. And squeezing them all down a bit so they're nice and secure. Like so, that's all they were for. So your wires are a lot more secure now, so you can actually more comfortably start weaving. So what we need to do to make the weave is we just need to start on one side. We will basically be doing the same with all of them, so the actual weave isn't going to be that difficult. For the first one, I'm just going to leave the first set out, I'm going to go in and grab the next two, and I'm going to put the first one of them over the other one. And another thing the beginning is going to be the most fiddly part because everything is still loose and you haven't really started out the weave yet. But it's going to work itself out and become a lot easier once you've done a little bit. And then all you need to make sure of, because you're using multiple wires per set, you just need to make sure that when you're weaving with them, that you make sure they stay flat and in the same place so they don't cross over each other within the weave, within the sets of wire. And say on the twisted ones that the twisted one is always in the middle. So that's just another little thing you need to keep an eye on. So I've crossed them two over each other. The furthest to the left of them two over the other one. And then I need to move on. And basically do the same thing with these two. So these two now, these two sets of wire. So take the first one over the next one, just like we just did with them. And for now you just want to try and keep your wire straight as possible until we get going properly with the weave. And then what you can do to help with that is the set of wire from these two that are coming underneath, bring them over the previous one, coming from the previous ones you did, because it'll just sit a bit better. And then the last ones, again bring the one to the left over the other one and make sure that the twist stays in the middle. So for now it's still going to be just a little bit tricky to keep hold of, but this is just to start off with, like so. And again you can bring this then over the next one. So you basically have the beginning of the twist, beginning of the weave, sorry, and now you can start kind of bending your wires so they stay in position. So you don't have to sit and hold them all. So just do it one at a time. Pull them into position. And like I said, it doesn't matter if the first bit doesn't get that neat because you can just cut that off. Just make sure that you get it going and then try and keep the rest as neat as possible. So it's going to look a little bit all over the place, but that's just until we get the weave going properly. And now what you can start doing is crossing all your wires the way they need to go. And basically all it is just alternating over under with each wire. So this is how it looks now. But as you can see, it's just this one goes over, under, and then we'll go over the next one. So it's just always the opposite. The next wire, set of wire that it meets, you need to do the opposite of what you've just done with the previous one. So we're slowly getting there, the beginning of it. And you start manipulating the wires into place properly. Like so. Now what we just need to do is bring that first one into it as well. For that one, because this is going to be the outside, you need to try and make sure that the bend that you do in it is kind of nice and even looking. And it's got a nice curve. So what I like to do is put my fingers on where I want it to curve and then just pull the wire to try and get as nice and smooth a curve as possible. And you can always manipulate it a bit. I like to try and make them a bit more rounded rather than like a sharp bend. So we'll do that for now, and that needs to go under the next one because the next one goes over, so you always want to make sure you do the opposite. So because this one went over that wire, this one needs to go under it. And then as we move on, it then needs to go over the next one, and again under the next one. So that's now been incorporated into it. And it's still going to seem a bit fiddly and probably like it's not really going to work out, but it will do. Just try and keep everything in place because it's still not quite secure yet. So we now have got the weave going. And then before you get too much further, if there's anything you want to correct, always make sure you go back in and correct it while you still have the chance, before you move on too much. So I want to just bend these a little bit more, so they all have a similar shape and curve to them. And then what we need to do now, this one on the outside is quite loose, as you can see. So because it's got no further to wrap around on this side, we need to bring that back in as well. So to do that, I just do the same thing. Make sure it lies flat and the wires in the set are not crossing over. I then put my fingers on where I want it to bend and start curving, and then I just slowly and gradually pull it back the other way to make sure I get that curve. And you can keep manipulating until you're quite happy with how it looks. Like so, try that. And then, because the previous place where these wires cross over, the one that's coming this way, the next one that this wire you just bent needs to cross. The previous place, it went under, so now that one needs to come over the one you just bent. So we need to bring that underneath, like so. And you can get a better look and see if it kind of looks the way you want it to look. And then it needs to come over the next set and under the last one. And it's slowly starting to turn into something. So just make sure when you're working with your wires that you bend and shape them into place where you want them to sit. That's the key thing, really. And do it while you're in the area, because if you come further down and you come back up and look, it's going to be very hard and near impossible to actually correct anything in the weave. So rather keep track of it as you go. So basically, as you can see, it's going to be, now that we've got the weave started more, that it's always going to be the outside ones you bring it into the weave and work your way down. So that's what we're going to do now on this side. Again, find out roughly where you want it to start curving. Put your finger on it, your fingers, and start curving it around and bending it until you're happy. And then because this is an open weave, you can't just pull your wires and then they stay in place, because then it'll obviously become a closer weave. So that's why you kind of gotta use your fingers to keep hold of where you want your wires to curve and bend. Because you then gotta look and see that the wires between each other will have somewhat equal distance between each other to make it a fairly even weave. So if I say that looks pretty good, I then need to go back under with it like so, and then bring it over the next one and then under the last one. And as you can see, weaving with the wire is obviously quite different than using cord or thread, because it works in a completely different way. you're doing the same thing really, but you just gotta manipulate it in a different way. Because with cord and thread, if you bend it, it just goes back into shape, nothing happens to it. With the wire, you want to avoid making a kink or a bend in it. So when you're weaving, just gently ease them over and under each other. And then that'll work out fine, and you won't kink them that way. Like so. Starting to look a bit more like something now. So now it's back to the other side. So keep hold of it with your thumb on one side and a finger on the other side, and then pull it down. And you can manipulate it into the shape you want it to have. Pull all the others into position and see how you like the look of it. If you need to manipulate it a bit more. Looks pretty good to me. And then, the reason that I bend it on top every time, I just find it a bit easier pulling around the top, even though we need to go underneath. I find it easier pulling it and bending it while it's around the top of the other wires, and then just feeding it back underneath. So we need to go under the first one, and then over the next one, and then under the last one. And then manipulate it a bit, work with it, make sure you get it looking exactly how you want it to look, and get them fairly equal distances and stuff. Like so. So we're roughly getting there now. So now from now on it's going to be a lot easier because you've done the first part, so that's all held in place. So now all you got to do is focus on bringing the outside ones in and weaving up and down in between the others. So like I said, you always bring the outside ones, alternating sides, in through the others and into the middle. And that's really all you do to make this weave. You just did that side, now back to the other side. Shake that, pull it in the direction to go back the other way, and then bring it underneath to start weaving in and out between the others. So under, over, and under. And push it into shape. Like so. And then you just go back to the other side. And that's all there is to the weave. So you just continue like this till you reach the length or you run out of wire. And then I'll show you how we finish it off. So I've finished weaving all the way until I've basically run out of wire. And what we need to do now is finish it off. So the way that we do that is basically you just need to cut your ends off. So you get your wire cutters out, and then you just choose where you want to cut it. So if, say, the end is a little bit not so neatly done, or the other end or something, you just cut it a bit in so you only have the nice part. So you just go over, take one set of wires at a time. It'll be a bit easier for your cutters to get through. And just try and go across in a straight line. And don't worry about your weave coming undone or unraveling, it's not going to, because this is wire that we've done it with, so it will stay in place. So you go all the way across. Like so. If it's not quite straight, you could always just cut off a little bit more on some of them. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight anyway, just roughly. like so. So we've finished off, we cut off one end, and then I like to do one end at a time. So I'm going to start finishing off this end. So what we need to do is use our ribbon ends for that. But before we get them out, one thing I like to do is, because you've cut your wires off now, so you got your end ready, you get your, what you would then do is get your ribbon ends, which look like this, and then you place this on top and you squeeze it down. But first of all, I always prefer to put glue in there first, so we'll do that. But also, in spite of there being glue, it might hold well enough, but for extra security I like to just basically roughen up the ends of my wire, so that gives the glue something extra just to grab onto, because otherwise you might just be able to pull your wires out, they can slip straight out because there's no friction there, really nothing to grab onto. So to do that, I get my flat nose pliers out, and then I just go in on 1 or 2, 3 wires at a time and just bend them, just the very 1 or 2 last millimeters. The outer ones I always bend inwards because you don't want them sticking out of the side of your ribbon end, but the other ones you can just bend them back and forth, different directions, because that's the whole point. You kind of want it to be the rougher the better. So that your glue and your ribbon end has got something to grab onto. And just try and hold your weave nice and close while you're doing this, so you don't disrupt that too much. Bend them, roughen them up. Like so. If you need to just adjust anything, just do that now, so you're happy with the way it looks. And still make sure that they're pretty much level if you can. So you still kind of have a straight line going across. So that looks pretty good, because then when you place that, it'll give it a lot more friction. And that's why you want to make sure you still have a straight edge, because if you got one bit sticking out, it'll work against it, and then your ribbon end won't go on straight. So roughen them up, and I just like to flatten them down. Make sure they're in place, and if you need to just adjust your weave a bit at the end, just do that now. Like so. So then we're ready to put on your ribbon end. So like I mentioned, before I put it on the end, I like to just use a bit of glue. For this I prefer using the E6000 glue, because it's a really strong glue, so it works really well for this kind of thing. It'll help keep it really nice and secure. And also it does dry clear, so in case anything seeps out a little bit somewhere, it would dry clear. So I take a bit of this, and I just normally use a toothpick, because you can't really do it straight from the tube, not the larger tube anyway. Take a bit on your toothpick, and then just use that to place it inside your ribbon end and move it around. Make sure you cover the whole sides of the ribbon end on the inside and down to the bottom as well. And you don't want to put too much in there, because that will basically make it, when you clamp it down, it'll squeeze the glue so it comes out from the sides and kind of goes all over the place. So you don't want to use too much, but obviously enough as well. So that's ready. And then one more thing I like to do, which is a reason why you don't want to use too much either at a time, so get a little bit more glue, and then I like to use that on the actual end of my bracelet, so on the wires. So you use your toothpick to get right there in between the wires, the ends that you roughed up, you bent them different directions, because you can get the glue right there in between, which will then help it adhere better to the actual ribbon end where you already put glue, so it can really bond together well. So just put enough there so you feel like it's nicely coated. Again, not too much. I put that aside. We're now ready to put them together. So you just place your ribbon end on the end of your bracelet, place them inside the ribbon end, and one last time just make sure you're happy with everything. And then what we need to do now is get our flat nose pliers out, because we now need to squeeze the ribbon end down and clasp onto your wires. And you just put your flat nose pliers on both sides and start squeezing it down. And I don't recommend you just go on one end and squeeze it all the way down. I recommend you do it a little at a time, move across, back and forth, gently squeezing it. Because when you do that, you still have time to just adjust the last bits if you need to, while it's still just a little loose. And then as you're getting further and further clamped, you get to a point where you then start going all the way, because you want to then make it really nice and tight. So you clamp it down nice and tight like this. Make sure you get right at the ends as well, because that'll help keep it proper in place. And I like to just come in from this side, because then you get the teeth nice and clamped down as well. Like so. So now that's in there really nice and securely. And obviously before you do too much, you just want to let the glue dry as well to give that a chance to adhere to everything. So you do that, you do exactly the same on the other end. You want to obviously can use like a measuring tape to measure how long you want it to be. So now say I wanted it maybe 7.5 inches. You want to cut it, but you want to take into account whatever clasp you're going to be using. So say if I wanted it 7.5 inches, I'll probably go down to cut it at 7 or just under 7 inches, because you need that extra space to add whatever clasp and jump rings you're using. So you do that exact same thing on the other end, and then I'll show you the last step. So I've now finished off both ends of my bracelet, and there's only one thing left to do really, because obviously it's still flat. So what we need to do is shape it into a bracelet shape. Now you can either use something to shape it around that you have that's like rounded or oval in roughly the right size, or you can just do it gently by hand. That's what I normally do. So all you do is you start just gradually bending it into shape. And you don't want to give it like a big bend, you want to gradually move back and forth, just a little at a time. And then you'll see it slowly starting to take shape. And don't worry about bending it like this, the wire's not going to break or anything. It shouldn't do anyway. And then keep working with it till you get it to the shape that you need it to be. And this, also doing this, it won't disrupt the actual weave, because all your wires are kind of kept in place now. Now we're pretty much there. Just the final touches. Make sure it's even. Now we're pretty much there, I would say. So if you're then happy with it, with the shape that it has, you can obviously try it on and see. And as you can see, the weave is still perfectly intact, and we have the bracelet shape. So all that's left to do now is attach jump rings, extend the chain, and whatever clasp you choose to use onto your ribbon ends, like I did on this one. I like to just use a lobster claw clasp and then an extended chain, because then you can still adjust the size if it's not quite right, because you can then bend it a bit to a different size if you need it. That's the benefit of using the extended chain. So that's all you do, just attach whatever clasp you want to use, and then your bracelet is done. So I really hope you enjoyed that, and thank you very much for watching.